Alrighty guys, so let's get our input working. We've already done this a little bit, and I can't believe we've actually gone this long without having any kind of input. So let's go ahead and make our player controller. Another one, just like Game Manager, that you're almost always going to have one of these in your game. We're going to go ahead and drag this on the player, and then I'm going to go ahead and look at my input system. It's up by default for me. If it wasn't for you, you're going to want to go and double click in your assets folder on the input action map. Right now, one of these, let's see, are any of these, I'm going to be doing clicking to be my like button in order to keep like tapping my plane up and down. So it doesn't look like we have any actions that are mapped to left click. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new action and call it tap. Now, it's a button. We want to definitely hit this little plus and add a binding and search for our mouse, our left button. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So there we have our button. We can go ahead and save our asset. And in our player controller, let's get some stuff going. Player controller, I think, is going to end up being one of our more complex scripts because it's going to have to touch a lot of different scripts. I'm going to bring up a couple notes really quick over here. And there's that one. There we go. So first things first, if we're going to get our input, and we're going to be using our input, we need to say using Unity Engine input system. And right out the gate, that means we're going to need a input action, and it's going to be our tap action. And if I remember correctly, the way we get our tap action is by assigning it in start. So tap action equals input system dot actions find action tap. Right? We want to go find the one that has to do that we named tap. Now make sure that that's spelled exactly the same way, because what that's doing in reality is going through this input system and looking through all these different actions for the one called, thank you, Creative Cloud. That's not what it's called. Looking for the one called tap. So I got that. We have our tap action. And now we want to do something whenever it's performed. And I did the little tab so it'll autocomplete for me. Now, in Brick Breaker, we moved our paddle by getting a hold of a component. We've already added this component to our plane. It's the one that has to do with physics. That one is our rigid body 2D. I'm going to say my RB. And I'm not doing this serialized field stuff. I'm a programmer. I don't need to go dragging things in. I'm going to say my RB equals get component rigid body 2D. That way then the designers can't go mess up my stuff. The artists can't mess with the little slots that I'm dragging things into. And I just have it right there. What I do want the designers to mess around with, so I'm going to do serialized field again, is how much can I jump? And I'm going to go ahead and make that a float and say that is our jump force. Okay? I'm looking at my notes real quick to make sure I haven't missed any. Very cool. Okay. And whenever we get our tap action and we click the button, I'm going to tell my rigid body to do something. We're not going to mess with the velocity. We're going to add force. And this is going to get a little bit weird, so just bear with me here. We're going to say new vector 2, because it... Now, you might be thinking, but we jump force is a float. If we hover over add force, because we're working in 2D, and if we were in 3D, it would be asking for a vector 3, we need to give it a vector 2 of force. We don't want our character being launched at a diagonal, so we know our x is going to be 0, and we're going to add jump force as the y. Now, we talked about overloads a little bit earlier, and we're going to need that here as well, because add force works in two different ways, right? If you don't have this force mode 2D.impulse, it'll work just fine. It's not going to give you any errors, but the default way that add force works is kind of like a rocket thruster, right? It doesn't give you a whole lot of impact, a whole lot of juice right at the start. It slowly builds up. And this tap action performed is only happening for a single frame, giving it no time to build up, right? So instead, we use its overload method, which says, well, what kind of force do you want to do? Impulse is the kind of force that we want to do. It's going to rocket it up really, really fast, all that energy in one frame. And with this, we should be able to get some jumping going. Unless you goofed like I did and took gravity off of our plane. So I'm going to go ahead and add the gravity scale back and give myself, I don't know, 5 jump force. And if I go run it now, I haven't tested this, so we're going to see if it works. It does. I can jump into the sky. And as I fly, I'm still going. There he goes. I think we're going to need a ceiling, guys. I think we're going to need a ceiling. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to create an empty and give it a box collider 2D. There's my empty invisible box. And I'm going to put it right up here at the edge and just scale it up. That way then I can't go off of the edge or go off of the roof. If I run it now, I hit the top. I think I'm gonna lock the rotation of my guy as well. So I'm gonna go over to the rigid body and lock the rotation. You don't have to technically, but I think that's gonna work a little bit better. Alrighty. Just looking at a couple things. Okay. So we can tap, we can jump, but we can't win or lose, and we can't get points. We can't do any of these different things, right? Let's go ahead and get it so that we can lose, right? The lose conditions for this game is hit the obstacles or hit the ground. So we've done code before that does collisions for us. That was with on collision enter 2D. Now, we could say if collision and we can get the obstacle or we can get the ground we don't really have any scripts on. We could get repeating background and see if that works. I think the easiest way right now though is going to be just giving these objects a tag. The game is so small, it makes sense to me just to say if transform.tag equals hazard, then destroy game object. I think that'll work. I think that'll work just fine. Let's go make a tag real quick. We're going to tag the ground. We're going to tag the obstacles. Hazard. So if I have my ground selected, I'm going to tag them. I'm going to tag these. Make a tag called hazard, spelt exactly the same. Ground, hazard. And let's go update our obstacle prefab. Now, we wouldn't want to tag this top object. We would want to tag the actual objects with colliders on them. There's that. So now, if I go and I just hit any of these objects, I should destroy the plane. You have them hit the ground, bam. And now, if I go and I do it again, try and hit one of the obstacles. Oh, bam. Oh, no. Getting errors. The object of type Unity. What is going on here? This is one of the things with the new input system that we haven't talked about too much. This plus equals, this when we're doing this performed and we're assigning our actions, stays around even if the object is gone. Even if the script is no longer in the scene, that assignment still lingers. So Unity comes with a couple functions. It comes with start. It comes with on collision enter. It also comes with on destroy. So we need to go and say in on destroy to stop listening by changing this to a minus. Let me make sure my head isn't in the way. Where's OBS? It totally is. The on destroy function, we need to go ahead and subtract the assignment away. This will happen before the actual object disappears, right? And that will make it stop listening and no longer give us these errors. So I'm going to go ahead and run it one more time now that we have that on destroy with the minus equals. Okay? No errors. Those errors, despite them not actually doing anything, can cause serious problems in your games. Now, we have a couple things here. We can destroy the plane, we can lose, but the background keeps going, which I think actually looks cool. But the game starts as soon as we hit play. I think our game manager should be in charge of when the game starts and when the obstacles start spawning and stuff like that. So, I think what we need is a function called, let me scroll it up, public void start game. And in this function, we're going to say to start the coroutine. And it's also probably a pretty good, let's go back over to our player. The first time we tap, in my opinion, is the best time to start the game, right? So, how do I go about doing that? I would say, well, if the game hasn't started yet, but I have nothing that says, game has started. I guess Game Manager could keep track of that. I'm going to have my serialized field. I'm going to, or actually I'm not going to have a serialized field. I'm going to say public. This one, I want other things to read, right? Public bool game. I'm going to actually say game running, right? So is the game running? And in my player controller, in start, I'm going to say, we can make this private. We don't need to go we don't need to go and like have other things messing with it through the player controller. I want a reference to my game manager. And in start, I'm going to say game manager. Whoop. I'm going to actually just call it GM. I think that's a little bit easier to remember instead of having to potentially write it wrong. Equals find object of type game manager. Now, we had gone, it crosses it out now. Find object of type is the old way of doing it. I'm going to say find first, it's not going to finish it for me now. Find first object by type game manager. Now, previously we had just done this and then said, okay, let me run a function or let me check a variable. But because I'm going to be using it more than once, to me it makes more sense to say, okay, let's save it to a variable. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say if gm.gameRunning equals false, gm.startGame. Else, we're going to add force. Right? We're going to jump. We're going to do all these different things. That, to me, makes a whole lot more sense. And then we can get rid of this start. We don't need it, actually. I like it. I like it a lot. There's still one thing I don't like. I fall right away. Now I can't even start the game. If I click, nothing happens because the player's not there. So to me, I don't know about you, but it makes sense to me for the player, if I'm not controlling it and the game hasn't started, it sure doesn't make sense for the gravity to be zero, or to be working, right? Maybe that's something else we have to add to our, right here, right? We're going to start game, and we're also going to set our gravity scale to 1. Magic numbers kind of suck, but when it's 1, it's kind of just like, oh yeah, you're turning it on, right? You have gravity. To me, that's okay. Now if I were to run it, nothing's happening. I click my button. Still didn't work. Uh-oh. Take a look here. Add force, start game. We never set the boolean to true. So we have to say game running equals true. It's important. Or else we're just going to keep telling the game manager to start game, start game, start game because it's set to false. And we'll never be able to tap. Ever, 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 ever. There we go. Now that, my friends, is a game that I suck at. I think I need to make my obstacles a little bit wider. Last thing I think we're going to do with this video. Points. They're a little bit important. We kind of need those, right? We kind of need it in order to make it feel like a game. I think, once again, we're going to track that in our game manager. But, so let's go ahead and make a score, right? Serialize field, not hide an inspector. Private float, no, int. Can you tell I'm getting tired for the day? Score. And we're going to make a little function here called public void add score that says let's give score plus equals 100 points. Same thing we did before. But what's actually going to trigger that? And I say that word very, very purposefully. Look at our obstacle real quick, which I want to make wider anyway. I'm just gonna move this guy up a little bit. When we get through this little gap, I want to add to my score. So, in order to do that, we're going to use something new that we haven't talked about yet. And I'm going to say score box. I made an empty game object on my obstacle, called it score box, and I'm going to add a box collider 2D to it. I'm going to edit it so that way then it takes up all the space here. That way then if I go through the gap, I definitely am going to hit the score box. There we go. But you might be asking yourself, like, but I'm just going to hit a wall then. It's basically just hitting an invisible wall. That's where we're going to make it a trigger. Triggers basically work like colliders, but you can pass through them, right? Let's also add a tag really fast. We're going to add, thank you, Creative Cloud. You really want to tell me something. Score box. And let's go tag it. Triggers will let us pass through it, but we can't run on collision enter to make that happen. Instead, we use on trigger enter 2D. And you'll notice that we aren't getting collision information, we're simply getting collider information. And it still calls it collision, which I don't like. It used to call it collider. But we're going to do the same thing we did before. If collision.transform.tag equals score box, then we have a reference to our game manager. Score, add score. And I hope I did that while it wasn't under my face. But there we go, right? We have our on trigger enter. It auto-completed to give us this collider 2D and collision. We then also have collision.transform.tag equals score box, and we tell our game manager to add score. Let's give it a try. Now, we're not going to see, we don't have any UI, but we do have our score right here. Okay. Boop. See if we can make it. It increased the score. Let's go. We have 300. Oh, I couldn't do that. I'm not strong enough. I think I need to make my bounce a little weaker, maybe, perhaps. But we did a whole lot there. And if it was overwhelming, that's okay. Go watch the video again. Talk to your friends. Talk to your TAs. Talk to me or your other teachers. We can all help you get through it. Because making games is hard. You saw me have a couple errors through here. We've went through, keep opening the wrong code, more actions. We found our game manager. We made another game manager. We made obstacles. We did inheritance. We did overrides and protected functions and coroutines, which are crazy. They can get complicated. Oh, I lied. We do got one more thing. We only want to do this while game running is true. Because when we destroy, we're going to tell it the gm.gameRunning equals false. And it's not going to start the game again because we destroyed our player next frame. Go ahead and give that a try. And that's for real the last thing we're doing in this video, I promise. I got a little too excited thinking that we got everything. Cool, we got it, 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 we got it. Well, bam. And you'll notice that is going to be our last obstacle. We could run a function that goes and destroys all the obstacles, but we don't need to be spawning more now. We've already got everything done. That terminated by setting this to false. It terminated the condition that said the coroutine could keep running. So we made a timer, we did coroutines, we wrote some functions, we added score stuff. We've got prefabs going and virtuals and overrides and all these different things. Make sure you're understanding them. You don't use all these every day, but we got a lot done in one session. So please, please, please follow up to the next video when you're ready. We're going to talk about sound effects and animations and getting our UI up one more time and restarting the game. All of that together, and we will have a finished Tappy plan. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck with this.